The collapse of modern intimacy and the rise of sovereign selfhood. The greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence, it is to act with yesterday's logic. Peter Drucker. Across modern societies, stable relationships are unraveling, trust between men and women is eroding, and traditional expectations of commitment and loyalty are collapsing. The nuclear family, once seen as the foundation of social order, now appears fragile or outdated. Many men experience modern dating as chaotic and hostile, while many women are encouraged toward empowerment without restraint or long-term accountability. Together, these forces create widespread confusion about the purpose of relationships and what stability means in a culture that prioritizes autonomy over attachment. This thesis examines three interlocking dynamics. 1. The cultural programming that destabilizes intimacy. 2. Historical parallels revealing that these patterns are not new. And 3. The rise of sovereign masculinity as a response to societal collapse. Rather than reducing these issues to gender wars or political narratives, the aim is to explore why modern intimacy feels unworkable for so many, and how individuals, particularly men, might reconstruct meaning in a time of relational and cultural breakdown. The cultural conditioning that destabilizes relationships. In recent decades, ideological shifts have encouraged women to see sexual freedom as empowerment and taught men to approach relationships with caution. Extreme individualism has led both sexes to favor self-gratification over stability, making commitment seem risky or undesirable. This cultural reprogramming has intensified for younger generations. Many women are taught that multiple partners increase desirability, yet often find that such freedom leads to emotional emptiness, poorer health, and deeper disconnection. Meanwhile, men struggle to distinguish between partners seeking commitment and those seeking short-term experiences, navigating unclear norms and significant emotional, financial, and reputational risks. As a result, relationships now feel unpredictable and uncertain for both sides. We are not living in an age of no values, but of competing values. Alistair McIntyre. The erosion of shared moral frameworks generates confusion, not because people are immoral, but because they no longer agree on what loyalty, commitment, or partnership should entail. Without consensus, relationships become negotiations rather than natural bonds. The breakdown of the family and society's structural foundations. Historically, societies with stable family structures flourish, while those that weaken them tend to fracture. Scholars across the spectrum agree that strong relationships support social cohesion, economic stability, and generational continuity. Today, however, personal expression is valued over collective responsibility, weakening the nuclear family and producing rising divorce, falling marriage rates, and growing emotional alienation. Young adults feel unsure of what healthy relationships look like and unprepared for responsibilities previous generations assumed. Norms such as modesty, commitment, and restraint, once common sense, are now seen as restrictive. Yet abandoning them has led to fractured families, unstable relationships, declining marital satisfaction, and singles overwhelmed by conflicting expectations. Historical parallels: Weimar, Rome, and the cycle of social decadence. Many assume the upheavals of modern relationships are unprecedented. They are not. Throughout history, from the late Roman Empire to the Weimar Republic, periods of social instability have often been accompanied by shifts in gender roles, sexual norms, and political identity. When economic or political systems destabilize, individuals often react emotionally rather than rationally, seeking immediate gratification, temporary pleasure, or psychological escape. This drives behaviors that undermine long-term stability. History is a vast early warning system. Norman Cousins. During Weimar Germany, for example, periods of hyperinflation and social fragmentation led many individuals, especially within urban centers, to seek emotional or material security through unstable romantic and sexual arrangements. Loyalty shifted from partners to ideological or political identities. Divorce rates spiked, and relationships became politicized. When society fractures, individuals often attach themselves to tribes, movements, or ideological collectives for safety or belonging, displacing intimate relationships in the process. The parallel to contemporary culture is striking. Relationships judged through ideological purity tests, political disagreement treated as moral incompatibility, loyalty shifting from individuals to causes, cultural narratives encouraging personal gratification over stability. These patterns reflect not novelty, but repetition. Civilizations entering periods of cultural or economic stress consistently show the same relational symptoms: distrust between sexes, fear of commitment, and the collapse of familial structures, male withdrawal, and the rise of sovereign masculinity. As cultural and relational instability intensifies, a notable response emerges among men: withdrawal from the traditional relationship system. This withdrawal is not rooted in hatred of women, nor in nihilism, but in a rational response to perceived instability. When relationship contracts feel unpredictable, when social institutions no longer support male roles, and when reputational or financial risks appear excessive, many men choose to opt out. Withdrawal becomes a form of psychological self-protection, but it also becomes something else: the beginning of reconstruction. History shows that when society destabilizes, some men turn inward and begin cultivating inner resilience. They prioritize personal sovereignty over external validation, developing competence, discipline, and clarity, traits that cannot be easily taken away or legislated out of existence. He who conquers himself is the mightiest warrior. Confucius. This inward turn represents not a retreat, but a transformation. Instead of chasing unstable relationships or seeking approval from a culture that mocks traditional masculinity, men begin building physical strength, and intellectual independence, emotional discipline, philosophical grounding, financial self-reliance, skilled brotherhood and community. This reconstruction of selfhood echoes the Stoic ideal in which external chaos becomes the catalyst for internal order, the psychology of betrayal and the shift of loyalty. When men develop sovereignty and independence, society often views it as threatening and responds through social pressure, sometimes applied through intimate relationships, to pull them back into dominant narratives. As a result, loyalty can shift from personal relationships to collective identities shaped by politics and ideology. Many men notice this when they face rejection or shaming for views that differ from mainstream expectations. Historically, during times of polarization, people, especially women, tend to align with groups offering identity and security, causing ideological loyalty to outweigh intimate bonds. Sovereign ignition, rebuilding meaning in a collapsing world. Amid this fragmentation, a new form of masculinity emerges, one rooted neither in dominance nor submission, but in sovereignty. Sovereign masculinity refuses to be defined by social trends, political movements, or relational instability. It is grounded in competence, resilience, and purpose. This is not an escape from society, but a reinvention of selfhood within it. Man is condemned to be free, because once thrown into the world, he is responsible for everything he does. Jean-Paul Sartre. The sovereign man is not reactive. He is intentional. He does not chase validation. He builds value. He does not depend on unstable cultural norms. He defines his own ethos. In a world saturated with noise, distraction, and ideological manipulation, sovereignty becomes an act of rebellion. For many men, the collapse of traditional relationship structures becomes the catalyst for an unexpected liberation, the opportunity to rise above societal scripts and cultivate a grounded, unshakable identity. The sovereign man does not seek permission to exist. He does not wait for cultural approval. He does not allow rejection or instability to define his worth. He becomes, in Nietzsche's terms, the person who overcomes himself. He constructs meaning through strength, discipline, and purpose rather than through institutions that no longer offer reciprocal loyalty. Conclusion: reclaiming purpose in an age of confusion. We live at a cultural turning point. Intimacy is unstable, institutions are uncertain, and identity is constantly contested. But as history shows, collapse also contains the seeds of transformation. As traditional structures falter, individuals, especially men, face a choice: break under the chaos or build under it. Out of chaos comes order. Friedrich Nietzsche. The path forward is not bitterness, cynicism, or hostility between the sexes. It is sovereignty. It is self-mastery. It is the conscious decision to build meaning rather than demand it. In a world that encourages emotional volatility, the greatest rebellion is emotional discipline. In a world that promotes promiscuity, the greatest rebellion is self-respect. In a world that dissolves identity, the greatest rebellion is inner coherence. The collapse of modern intimacy is not the end of the story, it is the beginning of a new chapter. It is the moment when men rise not as victims of cultural confusion, but as architects of their own destiny. Thank you for watching the video. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.